everyone's jumped on the Nacer Bouhanni is the worst person in cycling. He should be a punching bag debate. Benji and I were going to talk about it yesterday. I got caught up. I mean, I'm supposed to have highlights of this race. I had a deal. I thought, well, I did have a deal sort of for them at the end of last week. And yeah, it's just been a bit of a pain, to be honest. So I was trying to sort that out yesterday, unfortunately. So that got in the way of the Bouhanni discussion. But I think Benji, don't like the move. I mean, no one, Benji, has actually articulated the rule he's broken and got into had he launched his sprint? Have you launched your sprint if you're still in someone's slipstream, if you're coming out of your lead out man? So the rule he's breached is clearly, it's not the sprint rule, it's the reckless endangerment rule, right? But anyway, people, they're going to be more critical of riders who, A, they got a bad reputation, B, he's French. He's never going to do interviews to the English-speaking media. I assume most of the people listening here consume their cycling news from English, the majority of you English-speaking media outlets. So people who don't speak English in media interviews will get bashed harder. I may be guilty of it with Movistar sometimes. I'm like, no, I don't do it intentionally, but and I try to be fair. Jumbo-Visma, like, we've been very, very critical of them. But Sam Bennett, like the stuff he did to Quintana, the stuff he did to Emil Schleppens, I didn't see, these places that dip in and out of pro cycling news coverage doing standalone features about that sort of stuff. But yeah, what's your thoughts on it, Benji? We've had a short one today.
Yeah, when it comes to the country of the rider, it's very important to discuss as well, because, like you mentioned, a rider that is not from an English-speaking country is not going to address or have the support of his nation in that language to try and defend him or defend what he does. And I think that I noticed mostly because I'm also part of a French cycling Discord, and I was speaking with French people there. And it feels like a way more mixed feeling about it than I was noticing on Twitter, where everybody was straight up on Bouhanni. Now, my personal opinion is that he broke the reckless endangerment rule. He should be disqualified for what he did in the race. I believe that looking back at what Groenewegen did and how that led to the punishment that Groenewegen got afterwards. So, past the disqualification, because let's be real, a disqualification for a sprinter that is losing the sprint, he just loses the sprint again. So it's not like it matters too much if Bouhanni gets disqualified in a sprint or not. It's a punishment after it that counts. And I think that he needs to be punished out of competition for a bit. I'm unclear what to do, though. I was thinking, like a lot of people were thinking 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. 9 months being the amount that Groenewegen got. But let's be real. Groenewegen did not get 9 months of suspension if we look at it realistically.
It was backdated when he was injured.
Yeah, it's all retroactively, which means that he was, one, injured, but he also had an off-season during that.
Yeah.
And eventually that leads to the fact that people now expect 9 months for Bouhanni, but if it's in the middle of the season, then he's going to get more punishment than Groenewegen. And I find that unfair. I believe that he should get a few months of penalty. I think that it's
3.
Probably 3 months or something, I think is good, yeah. And the reason being that he should get one because he's, one, done it before, but also next to that, it doesn't matter if you do it as before, it only increases the penalty if you have done it before, in my opinion. And therefore, I'm aiming for 3 months or something with my thought process. I believe that what he did was not supposed to be a thing. He obviously didn't have, a lot of people are also saying he had the only thought process to try and push Stewart into the barrier. I don't think that's true. I believe
he's trying to win the race.
Yeah, he's trying to win the race, and he makes a move and doesn't care if someone is in the wheel of Viviani. And he makes that move, he slashes into Viviani, Stewart, not Viviani. Viviani won the race. And he did that because, he didn't care if somebody was in the wheel. And the not caring part, the negligence is the issue. And that is something that makes me kind of feel like it needs to be punished as well. If it was just that, for example, he loses his balance and rides into Stewart, it's a completely different situation. But he
Okay,
didn't. He just
Benji,
wanted to win the race. He moved to the left. Okay, go.
devil's advocate, what suspension did Pascal Ackermann get for his move in Shelter Price last year where he actually caused a ride hit the deck at 70 k's an hour?
Well, I think we were
Nothing.
calling for one, but he got nothing.
Yeah.
So that's the issue here, that they only started
Ackermann didn't give a
giving
fuck
punishment
who was
Kooneway.
there. Sorry, go on.
Like you're right, but yeah, I obviously don't conclude the consistency of the UCI, but it's fucked, because they
No,
only
my problem,
started giving
Benji,
a
is my
suspension like
problem.
that. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
we agree it's not consistent. My problem is the UCI are going to suspend Bouhanni because more people in the media are putting pressure
yeah,
on them to do so than with Ackerman. And that's my problem with it. If it was just the UCI being ran, but it's like the
yeah,
media are going to be like, the Ackerman thing was pretty bad in my view. And people are like,
yeah,
oh, he's a nice guy. But I was like, ooh. You saw in the end of Hen Favelhem, I did it in the freeze frame. Nizzolo, he wanted to swing into Trenton to get onto Wout van Aert's wheel, but he had to half pedal for like a microsecond just to wait for the gap to open up. He had to do the right thing. Peter Sagan against Hugo Hofstetter. In the sprint he got relegated for, he didn't get any sanction for, he did close to the same move on Hofstetter. He's on, got two lines. You got Azure Desert rider moving up on the right-hand side on the barrier. You got Hofstetter on his wheel. Sagan is on the left of the Azure Desert rider. Sagan sees him moving up quicker, tries to slot onto his wheel, pinches Hofstetter. Hofstetter said on Twitter too, like, he made a big deal about it. He's like, what the hell? I nearly got fucking put into the barriers. I had to brake to not go to the hospital today. Not a problem. Same move as Bouhanni, pretty much. Elisa Longa Borghini, dirty move against
yeah.
Annemiek van Vleuten in Worlds for the third. Like, deliberately saw Van Vleuten coming and nearly put her into the barriers. Definitely intentional. Groeneweggen's worse than Bouhanni. You can't say it wasn't intentional shutting the door. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of these things that go unpunished. If we want to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, well, today we're going to take them very seriously. Bouhanni's getting 6 to 12 weeks. Groenewegen got 9 months. Anyone plays up, you're getting to get a similar infraction. That's fine, but I don't think that's the way it's going to happen. Do you reckon next time Bennett or whoever, Caleb Ewan too, puts a shoulder into someone who's trying to, half take their lead out men's wheel, Benji, that if they don't crash, they're going to get sanctioned?
No, I don't think so. And I think we've repetitively mentioned every single time when something similar happens that a lot of stuff is inconsistent. And if they, it's really hard to
Bauhaus Saudi
process what they
tour
could
to
do.
Bouhanni cost him the GC in 2020.
Yeah. There's so many examples. There's like an endless amount of examples at this point. I at the end of last year, I was going to try and write something about it, but I realized that once I was like 2 hours into writing the document about like every single incident I remember, I had like 24 incidents written down, and
Mate,
they
you
were
mentioned
all
it every second
inconsistent to each
day.
other. I think the one you mentioned just a second ago, the Lamborghini one, is the most extreme one because there's not too much coverage of women's races. Less people watch women's races, and because of that, the media is going to punch less on people that do this stuff in women's races as well. Lamborghini almost pushed Van Vleuten into the barriers, and I'm pretty sure she didn't get a disqualification. We don't know.
No,
We don't know
I think
whether
she
she got
got
relegated or
relegated from
not.
third to third.
We don't know because the paper is never publicly released for UCI World Tour race, World Championship races. So
All right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and with the Groenewegen suspension, I don't think we have a lot of the details about that. It's not transparent, and it's all a mess. Now, I was thinking about doing a video about it, and listen, Benji, never do anything for free that you're good at. If the UCI wants to pick photographic memories of every single professional bunch sprint in the last 3 to 4 years, and we can talk about all the infractions and say what the rules should say, and we can actually draft up some rules that work so that, if you're out of the saddle in the drops, you're sprinting, you don't just have to be that's when your sprint started, or just define when you've launched their sprint, because there's no way for anyone to conclusively and definitively say that Bouhanni had launched his sprint at that point. He was sprinting, but doesn't the rule mean you're like in clear air? We don't know. Who knows? So, but yeah, 6 to 12 weeks. I think Bouhanni, he's a bit of a jerk, it seems. Doesn't show much. Like, even his apology was a bit half-hearted. That being said, from his perspective, this shit's happened to him like 3 times in the last 18 months. Cost him a GC, a stage win, and then in Tour de Provence stage 1, Ballerini closed him a little bit. So he's probably thinking, he's doing the Balotelli. Why always me? I think. But I think the last point is, Benji, can we say for sure that he knew Stewart was right there?
No, I think we can't, because I think we know that 300 meters earlier they were going into each other already, but
that was on the other side of the road.
It's on the other side of the road, and it doesn't influence this part. I think that he was looking clearly to get into the wheel of Viviani and just didn't care if somebody was in the wheel, and that didn't care part is the issue. And that is what caused it to happen. He should have been aware or looked whether someone was there instead of making the blind move and making the very reckless move, and that's the issue.
Yep. All right. That was our Nacer Bouhanni segment. We didn't plan that, but we got into it for 10 minutes. We might upload it to the LRCP Clips YouTube channel. We're trying to copy all the popular YouTubers like Impulsive and H3, etc., who have their own Clips channel.